It's time for a follow-up to a video I did previously, and that was what is inside a wheelchair motor. We took apart a Permobil, I think it was a C300 or M300, I don't know, one of the Permobil drive motors, and showed you what was inside, showed you the gearbox. It looks like this one's alright. Alright, there we go. And inside the Permobil ones, the gearbox was very simple. It consisted of a big Delron gear and a worm gear that rotates it. Now, Permobil does things a little bit differently than most people. So what we're going to do is take apart the gearbox on this chair. This is, well, it's a Jazzy 600 ES, but it's very similar to a Quantum wheelchair, like a Q6 Edge 1 or something to that effect. And this is the one that I replaced the grease seal on, well, between the gearbox and the output shaft a while back. It was a quick and dirty repair. It's not supposed to be inside the electrical part of the motor. Not at all. But I need to actually disassemble the gearbox on this and inspect it because I think it is damaged. And also I need to put a little bit more grease in there. So I'm going to get this thing taken apart, and then I'm going to show you what's actually inside a true gearbox in a power chair and show you why you lose 25 to 30% of the power with a chair that has a 90-degree motor with actual gears inside of it, as opposed to one of the Permobil ones, which are way more efficient. All right, we have removed the motor from the chair. Actually, I should probably take off my watch. Whoops, that's not good for it. And these things are greasy and disgusting, usually. So, what we have is, this is the motor, this is the gearbox, and then here's our output shaft that the wheel mounts to. And this whole thing just basically attaches to this bracket right here. Now on the Permobil, the gearbox was very simple. This one actually has a couple of jack shafts in it and other gears and whatnot. So let's go ahead and remove the cover from this thing. I think I got most of these screws already loose. And then our neutral lever here needs to be taken off. There's a little Allen or a set screw here that holds this in, and we'll want to note the position. Oh, actually never mind, I guess that will stay on there. So the whole lid comes off, and it looks like I might have already broken the nope, gasket's fine. All right, we're good. I was gonna say there is a gasket in here, so you have to be careful when you're taking this apart. Carefuling. All right, there we go. Okay, so that appears to be our neutral lever. We'll have to see how that actually works here in a minute. But check it out. What we have are actual gears. So our motor has a drive shaft that comes in here, and it engages with a worm gear on this big gear here. Then this gear is connected to a jack shaft with a smaller gear, and that connects to this one, which is the output shaft, which is a bigger gear. So we've got two gear reduction steps going on here. And let me see. I don't think I can have it in neutral while the lid is off. Now it looks like what happens here is when you flip the thing in neutral. Now, let me back up. This chair has an actual gearbox neutral. A lot of chairs have a lever here on the back that simply turns off the brake. But this one actually physically disengages the drive gear. So when I say neutral lever, I mean it in the literal sense on this chair. But it looks like this pin here pushes against the side of this gear. So let's see. This should be on a spring. What I'm guessing here is there's a spring, and when you push on the side of this gear, yeah, see how it moves? So this gear here is mounted on a spring, and it interfaces with this one here. And when you push this over, you can see there's a little bit of a gap right here between these two gears. So when that lever pushes on the side of this, see how that gear is now moved out of the way? And it is no longer engaged with this. So your output shaft can turn freely. Now the gears are just bound right now, so the second I turn the shaft, it'll snap back. But that's essentially how it works, is the side of this gear just basically gets pushed out of the way, and then this whole thing can just free spin. So interesting design there. I was hoping I would, oh wait, no, I can. I was going to say, I was hoping I could power this up and show you it actually operating, but then I just realized it's still attached to the chair, and the chair is on a jack, so we can power this up and show you what happens. Oh, I forgot I unplugged the joystick. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Nope. Let me power this up and I'll show you what it does. Just probably make sure this towel is out of the way. Okay, there we go. Now you can see what's going on in here. And the whole thing tries to slide off the jack. Hang on, let me fix this. Okay, now you'll be able to see how the thing works. Yeah, the motor shaft just comes in here and rotates this, rotates that, then our output shaft turns. Now this white grease here is what I squeezed in last time I had this thing apart. So we'll just squeeze some of this in here. The grease seal is right down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean all this out of here, and then I've got some all-purpose grease here, and we're going to pack this thing a little bit more. I thought this thing was going to be all dried out, but it actually has, I mean, some grease in here. There should be more than that, but yeah, kind of a cool mechanism. By the way, that clicking sound is one of the motor brushes. You know what? I think this motor might be... So that sound's not coming from the gearbox. I think our motor might be slightly off kilter, and one of the rotors might be interfering with the side of the casing. So I'm going to clean some of this grease out of here so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And then I'm going to loosen this up and see if we can't get the alignment set properly so it stops making that clicking noise. Okay, I've gotten some of the grease cleaned out of here, and now you can see the spring that I was talking about here. When you put the thing in neutral, this gear is pressed out by that spring, and you can see when you hit neutral, it just basically disengages it physically, so it's easier to turn. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't get this motor aligned. Basically, the two long screws that hold the two halves of it together are probably out of alignment. So the way to do this is, well, let me take this cap off, then I'll show you. I've got the little cap that covers the brake mechanism taken off. So if we turn this to the side here, you should be able to see there's a screw here and a screw down here. And these go through the entire length of the motor and attach it to the gearbox. So what I'm going to do is just basically loosen these both a tiny bit. There we go. Now I loosen that just enough so that when I grab the motor and the gearbox, they should, see how they move a little bit independently? Now I gotta be careful not to turn this too far because it will damage things, but essentially what I'm gonna do is turn on the motor and rotate this till it stops making that noise, and then in theory, that should be our problem, or what's going on, or I don't know, something. This should fix it. That's how I've done it in the past. So let me space this back up here. There we go. Okay, I changed my mind. That sound is either one of the brushes or the bearing here in the back. Because as you can see, I was rotating this a pretty decent amount and nothing was changing. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the rear housing off of this again, because I remember last time I was in here, I probably should have cleaned the commutator anyhow. So I'm going to disassemble that. I'll be back. Yeah, look at that. See how messed up and dirty that commutator is? That is definitely going to be causing a problem. So, oh, I forgot to take the brushes out first. Okay, anyways, I'm going to clean this up with some sandpaper and then hit the brushes with very, very carefully with a file, and then we're going to see if our clicking goes away. All right, I got the commutator cleaned off, but if you look at this brush here, you can see there is a lot of wear damage on it. See how the edges are all jagged and not very even there, and there's like score marks in the middle. Now, normally I don't recommend this, but you can very carefully clean this up with a file. Now these carbon brushes are ridiculously soft, so just you don't even let the whole weight of the file hit it. But essentially I'm just going to bevel all the edges here just a little bit, and that should cut down on the noise it's making. Now this will create a little bit less contact area for the electricity to go through, but at the same time, after a little bit of use, this thing should wear in and be fine. A lot of times these motors, everything is not perfectly round, so when you put these in there, see, now you got a nice bevel on all the edges. When you put them in there, they kind of cog one way or the other, and they kind of take a wear or a set in their wear pattern. And if you remove the brushes and don't put them back in the exact same orientation, they can make noise. And that's also why a lot of wheelchairs make a clicking sound when you back up, because the brushes, normally they're going to be sitting here like this, and the screwdriver handle is the motor shaft, and they're going to be sitting against it. So as they turn, you can see how the shaft kind of pushes it, in effect, that direction. So you get a lower edge here and a higher edge here. So when you turn around and back up, that edge is going to kind of try and dig in a little bit, and that's going to make that clicking noise. Not a bad thing, it just can be annoying. But yeah, I'm gonna file down on this a little bit more and make this surface a bit better, because it did get coated in grease and everything as well. And then we'll slam this thing back together. With the motor housing off of here, you can see, you can get a little bit better idea how this works. The motor shaft comes in here and turns, and then that activates the rest of the gears inside this thing, and then your output shaft turns. Alright, I've packed this thing with grease, it's put back together. I put some grease in this bearing on the end. I thought that's maybe where the noise was, but I think it's just the brushes. Everything looks fine inside this gearbox. So, pack the grease in there. Let's go ahead and fire up the motor and see what it does. Oh yeah, look at that grease mixing in there. Yep. Ah yes, churning and mixing away at our bucket of cherry flavored lubrication. That's probably a little bit too much grease, but there's still plenty of airspace in here, so I don't think we're going to have any issues. And I probably should have also cleaned out the old grease, but hey, whatever. This chair is just going to be used for people that want to hop in and like follow me around and stuff. I'm not selling this thing to anyone that's going to be relying on it or whatever, so yeah. Oddly satisfying though. Alright, let's get this thing put back together. Alright, we got this hoopty all put back together. When I took it apart the first time when I was replacing the grease seal, I took the fender off and forgot to put it back on. It's somewhere in the white van. I kind of looked for it and couldn't find it, but oh well. The motor still on the side makes a significant amount of noise. I have confirmed it is the brushes, not the rear carrier bearings. But that's one of those things that doesn't necessarily matter. It pretty much just makes noise and doesn't adversely affect the operation of it at all. In theory, the more you use it, those brushes will wear down and that noise should get better. But that motor's seen a lot of action. The commutator's kind of damaged. I did clean it up, but I don't really care. I thought about putting the high-speed motors on that chair. It would take some modification. And would be completely pointless, but that is something I might do at some point. But anyways, it's all put back together now. Seems to be working. At least I know there's grease inside of it. what I kind of forgot to show you or inspect when I had the motor taken apart is those separate jack shafts that are in there and the output shaft and those other gears. Depending on the manufacturer, the way those gears are attached to the shafts is what can also result in a lot more power transmission loss. Now on the Invacare chairs, like the older TDX ones, not the brushless, those are completely different. Those are outstanding motors. But a lot of the older Invacare chairs, you may notice that when you're stopped, the chair will move a couple inches. And what that is, those, maybe I can find a picture online, but the motor shafts have the gears go around them, and then there's sort of a keyway that makes them attach to the shaft. But they didn't use set screws similar to the hubs that I was talking about a long time ago on my Frontier V6 chair that I had to have modified by a machine shop. But there's a couple different ways you can do it. They can be pressed onto the shaft, and then they're probably not going to be moved, or they can be pressed with a keyway, or have a keyway and set screws that hold them solid. I didn't look on this one to see how exactly they were attached, but let's check here real quick. Now these motors do have a lot of wear on them, so I'm going to move the chair back and forth and let's see how much movement we get. Okay, that's actually not too bad. It's actually pretty similar to this chair I'm sitting in, which actually these two chairs are fairly similar. This is a Jazzy 600, which is Pride, which Quantum and Invacare uses. This is a Quantum Q6 Edge 1, but it has, I swapped the Q-Logic 1 controls onto this one. But this chair uses Invacare electronics, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to be too bad for the amount of play in there. But those old Invacare chairs, they really had problems with those keyways wearing out. And my first power chair was a TDX SI2, and I had to get new motors on that at least once or twice a year. That's how bad they were. And ultimately the FDA wound up shutting them down because they had a lot of safety and other issues. I mean, there was more than once that my old first power chair died on me and friends had to push me back to the van. Not ideal. But this one, I'm gonna guess that the gears are pressed onto the shafts. I might review the footage and see if I can see any indications of that. But yeah, any point where there's a connection or a gear or anything like that, you're going to lose a little bit of power. And when you're going through, so you've got the motor shaft, which connects to one gear, which connects to a shaft, which connects to another gear. That gear meshes with another gear, which is connected to another shaft, and that goes to your output. So that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connection points roughly if you count the intermediary shafts in there. So yeah, you're going to get a lot of power transmission loss, as it were, just going through all those gears. As opposed to the Permobil ones, where there is a single rotating gear with a worm drive on the top, and that's all there is. The more connection points, the less efficient. But anyways, I just wanted to show you that. I would say probably, aside from Permobil, 90% of the stuff out there uses gearboxes like this, at least on the right angle style motors. That's where the motor is facing one direction and the wheel attaches to the side. Now the Jazzy 614 HD, for example, uses inline motors, which is similar to how my Frontier V6 works. The motors are actually in line with the output shafts, and they either use some planetary gears with some idlers, or just a couple of little gears, but everything is all in line, and the power doesn't have to turn corners, as it were. But anyways, there you go. I just wanted to show you the inside of that, and you can kind of see what kind of weirdness is going on inside them.